Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Property Venture Podcast, the show where we are dedicated and committed to offering educative information to our listeners all around the world, where we're talking about all things real estate. And today, we're really starting from the foundation of real estate, pun intended, where we're going to be talking about structural engineering. And I've invited my friend Riad Darwiche, who is the founder of Structurio, and he is a structural engineer in Montreal. So he's going to be talking to us about the details and really the nitty-gritty about foundations, structural engineering, and all sorts of fun stuff. So Riad, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great seeing you. It's great seeing you again. It's great seeing you. It's been a minute since the last time I saw you.
It's been a couple months, almost a year now.
Yeah, it's been time flies, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm excited to have you on, man, and I think this is going to be an awesome episode. So awesome that we're extending this episode for our listeners, because I found that there was too many things to talk about structural engineering to put it in our basic episodes. So we're doing a little bit of a special episode today. So for our listeners, Riad, let us know exactly who you are, how you started, and what came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I completed my bachelor's degree in engineering, and right off the kicker, I started off in civil. Civil engineering is what I did, just because I didn't like anything that moved. I just liked anything that stayed stable and didn't fall off. So that's how it came about. Then I started my career in construction at a big contracting firm. Did that for about 8.5, 9 years almost. Switched to consulting, and this is where sort of the light bulb went off. In consulting, it's very paper-based.
Okay.
Reading contracts, PowerPoints. I was bored.
Yeah.
Say, right? Having spent 9 years on the field. So I'm like, okay, where can I get back to reuse my technical skills? And just for some reason, my friends always had called me whenever they had projects around the house to come give them a hand.
Yeah.
And I noticed there's a missing niche in the market of structural engineering services for residential homes.
Residential
At first. That's how it started off, right? Because, when you think of a structural engineering firm, you think of those big firms with high overheads that do these major projects. But these small niche firms, there's a lot of them. So kicked it off, started off the company in itself, and it just took off ever since.
Yeah, that's amazing. I like that you said that, because, I'm myself am involved with property management, and I started off as a real estate broker, and I got into property management because I saw that there was a need for it in my clientele, which, inspired me to start my own company and everything. And I like that you identified that need.
Absolutely. And it's trials and errors, right? At first you start off, everybody tells you to start off as an inspector.
Yeah.
To me, it's, okay, great. I'm not an inspector. There's intricacies of a house I don't know about. I know what I know in terms of structural purposes.
Yeah. So
I have a lot of inspector friends, and they would sort of drag me along or tell me, hey, Riad, like, I saw this in the home. Is that a problem? Is that not a problem? And I give them a hand. So it's interesting, because it's the more you know, the more you talk to people, the more you realize, okay, there's a gap in the market here that you can exploit.
Yeah.
Take advantage of. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And it's about identifying. I talk about this all the time, guys, identifying opportunities. Because opportunities are not always obvious.
No.
And you need to identify them, which you clearly did.
Yeah.
And that's why you started Structurio, and and that's great skill to have.
No, absolutely. It's been good. It's been fun.
So, like, structural engineering is at the core of so many projects. Can you tell us exactly the core fundamentals about it?
Yeah, I mean, from a service level perspective, it varies really, right? Every single person, every single client would have a need based off of what the project they're undertaking. For example, if somebody's buying a home, they want to know, is their house structurally sound? So they probably want an engineering opinions report. If somebody's doing renovations, they want to remove load-bearing walls, well, they probably want an engineering design report. If you're working with for example, a developer, and he wants to just build slots, lands of homes, he wants, again, plans, drawings, and whatnot, but he wants to be a cost-efficient matter and just sort of a copy-paste back and forth. When you work with municipalities, obviously at times you have an old heritage building that's falling apart. Well, they want to say, okay, how do we reinforce it? How do we stabilize it? What can we do? And the last piece of it, I would say for the time, it's a subject matter expert. Okay. Litigations, claims, all that fun stuff. Well, you're often called about by lawyers, which not a lot of people know about that. The legal team, lawyers call you up, hey, we need an engineer. We need somebody that's an expert, subject matter expert on this to testify in court and to give his opinion about what's going on. So there's a lot of aspects that could arise out of it. So
Yeah, and it seems like it's multifaceted. Like there's a lot of layers, right?
A lot of layers. This is if you're keeping it at the basic residential level, right? Obviously, once you start into going
Commercial,
construction, absolutely.
Yeah, commercial and residential are two different games.
It's two different beasts.
Yeah, whether you're in sales, management, like myself, or structural engineering, even building inspectors, for example, their permits only authorize them to certain building inspectors only authorize them to inspect buildings with 4 or less units, and then they need a whole special qualification for a multi-unit, let's say, of 12 units. So
yeah, even from an engineering standpoint, if you look at it's called up to 3 to 4 stories house, you're typically looking at a wooden structure frame.
Okay.
If you're going above that, it might be steel or concrete or mixed. So it's a completely different ballgame at that point in time as well.
Okay, so like I have so many different questions after all this opening, because this is the first time that we have a structural engineer on the show, and because it's so multifaceted, there's just a ton of questions here. So you mentioned wood structures.
Correct.
Has that changed? Is that an old structure, or it's still based like...
It's still the basic building blocks of Quebec. Now,
okay.
The beauty about wood is it retains heat very well.
Okay.
Right? It's pretty well insulated as a product in itself. It's cost efficient. It's eco-friendly. It's recyclable. So there's a lot of advantages for it. It's actually, believe it or not, a lot of companies are coming, like Nordic, for example, they're coming up with wood solutions for major projects. Like pretty soon you'll be seeing stadiums, but completely out of wood. So yeah, no longer residential. So it's coming back, and it's coming back with a bang. So it's obviously today's wooden construction, however, in structures are not the same as what they used to be.
Yeah.
Back then you see those big wooden logs.
Yeah.
Now, you have engineered lumber, you have, beams, LVLs, you have different types of technologies that are applied today. So it's coming back.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that, because, being in real estate, and, I walk through many properties.
Yeah.
And one thing I miss and love, guys, is hardwood floors. They don't make that flooring anymore. That was like a thing of the 70s, of the 80s maybe, and they don't make it. And, went from like hardwood to parquet, and now it's just engineered flooring, or what they call it, right?
Yeah.
Which is...
It's different.
It's different. The quality, the durability, the longevity of it. Like every time I go through a property and I see those hardwood floors, I go, guys, this is beautiful. And people talk about putting floating floors on and laminate. I said, why? Yeah. Sand, varnish, stain it at the very most, but stunning. And the quality is just fantastic.
Second to none. I mean, listen, there's reasons why we have so many 1910 houses still standing.
Yeah.
Still standing strong.
Yeah.
You go down in those crawl spaces, which I absolutely hate, but I've been down a couple of times, and you have an old piece of like a big log.
Tree trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see it all the time too.
And it's there. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's sturdy.
It is sturdy.
Yeah. Tree trunks
Absolutely.
are sturdy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I see it all the time.
Absolutely.
And so for example, when you're taking on a project or something, do the regulations vary from municipality to municipality, or?
So typically the National Building Code of Canada is province to province, right?
Province to province.
Correct. These are the applied loads,
Okay.
right? Obviously, when you go to municipality, what varies is what they require in terms of document for permitting.
Okay.
So, for example, we have a project right now in Hampstead, which they do require an engineer sealed stamp drawing that specifically says whether it's for permitting purposes or construction purposes, right? The difference being that in permitting purposes, there's assumptions, construction, everything's exposed, and you see exactly what's there. Other municipalities, they don't care, right? You can give them a picture, marked up, stamp, and that's it, and they're good to go. So that's what varies, right? That's the only kicker.
Okay.
In another form, there's obviously a lot of municipalities that have patrimoine, like they want to keep a certain look of the building and the exterior.
Yeah.
So you're limited on what you can do on the outside appearances of it.
Material-wise.
Correct. So there's also that consideration. But from a generic perspective, whatever you're working at the skeleton of the house, which is what we do, there's no real restrictions on it.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So my next question would be, what are some of the common misconceptions that people have in regards to the importance of structural engineering?
Well, listen, it's I'm going to try to put this in layman's terms, or you buy a car.
Yeah.
Okay. Brand new car. You drive it off the lot.
Goes down in value.
Goes down in value. But it still functions, right?
Yeah.
But every now and then you got to do oil changes, right? And once you drive 60, 70,000 kilometers, problems start to come up. And you may ignore some here and there but it will compound and get worse and worse with time. So often what I see is you're outside, you start hearing cracking in the flooring, you start seeing cracking around the house. You ignore it. It's okay, it's small, it's a little house. Cracks. Well, these small items will eventually lead to bigger problems. So I would always tell people, listen, even if it's small, even if you doubt, even if you're not sure, address it yourself. Like if you see an exterior foundation crack, it might not be structural today, but the infiltration of water will make it eventually a big structural problem in the future. So patch it.
Yeah.
So this is something I would tell, like, people think about, oh, I need a structural engineer whenever the problem happens. Well, at that point in time, the problem happened. What do you want me to fix? You have to change it, right?
Yeah.
So address it early.
That's key.
Yeah.
You know, I had a client of mine in my management portfolio. He was a cancer surgeon, and we had a bad tenant in his property once. And he said, and I'll never forget this. He said, Giancarlo, he said, as a cancer surgeon, I could tell you that the best way to get rid of it is to cut it off from the source as early as possible. And he was referencing obviously a bad tenant, get rid of him, don't give too many chances. But when he used that example, it stuck with me. And I use that example with some of my clients. If you need to get it from the source as early as possible.
Of course.
And naturally, cracks can lead to bigger issues. Now, there's different types of cracks, right?
Absolutely.
Hairline, structural cracks.
Absolutely.
Some that require injection, some that require full-on membranes.
Correct. And there's different sources of the cracks where they come from. There's a reason why they happen. But just keep in mind, a structural crack does not start off as a structural crack.
No.
Right? It starts off as a hairline crack and eventually. Now, why did that hairline crack come about?
Yeah.
That's a different story. But
yeah, it's like a car, right? For you driving, you hear a noise every once in a while, then that noise gets more frequent, and next thing you know, you break a bearing and you're done. And you're done.
And you're waiting for a towing truck. Exactly.
And you're done. And you got to replace a fender and everything.
And then the bills pile up.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing.
So as someone who's deeply involved in construction, design, and these projects, what are some of the challenges you face in your profession?
You know what? It's always about meeting expectations.
Okay.
So typically client, they have a vision, but they don't always know how to project that vision.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we're not interior designers.
No.
For a reason. I don't have that artistic skill. And I'll say it openly, right?
Yeah.
And then, whenever you're at a client's house, and I'll take a very basic example. They want to remove a wall.
Okay.
And you ask the client, okay, you want to remove a wall? Fantastic. How wide do you want to remove it? Do you want to remove the whole thing? Just a partial? Why? And they start going into details. Well, I want my kitchen counter to be this wide. It's like, listen, I don't know what that, I just need to know how big your opening is going to be.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to understand what the client's vision is to design accordingly and to make sure that they get the product where all the subsequent staff crafts can do their work properly to make that vision come to life. You're the starting point, right? And one thing that clients don't tend to realize is that everything is doable, okay? Everything. You want to remove a 40-foot wall and not have a bulkhead? We can do it. It's going to be made out of steel. It's going to cost a lot of money. Then you're going to have to do reinforcements in the basement at the foundation level. Now, what's your trade-off? That's what you got to understand with the client. And you got to be able to explain to them, okay, well, if you, for example, let's take, a 20-foot span. A 20-foot span, if you use LVLs, you're going to be about 7 inches wide. Let's just say, for example, you're going to be about 16 inches deep at most. Okay, great. You have a joist of 8 inches deep. You can put joist hangers. That means you're going to have a bulkhead of 8 inches. Client might Grant, I want a bulkhead. I don't want it to show up.
So, just quickly for our listeners who might not know, what is a bulkhead?
A bulkhead is, for example, you have a nice flat ceiling, and then all of a sudden you have a little drop down where the beam runs. Right?
Yeah, the boxes that you see in corners.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes.
Or sometimes you just run in the middle of a room because there's a beam there, right?
Yeah.
So, client doesn't want a bulkhead. Great. Then you try to understand, okay, well, you need a 20-foot opening. Is there a way that we can reduce it? And reducing it doesn't mean reducing it from one side. You can put, for example, 3-foot walls on either side, and then you're all of a sudden you're from a 20 feet down to 14 feet.
Yeah.
And that 16-foot beam is down to 12, right? So there's a lot of things. So you need to understand what the client's needs are, discuss it with them, and just ask the right questions. That's what they want.
I think that's important because I think homeowners and clients, in their head and their mind, it's aesthetic, removing a wall.
Absolutely.
It would look a lot better if we had this open and an open concept kitchen, but they don't understand that there's a structural component behind it, which
affects, if you compound effect to it.
Yeah, and if you're a DIY homeowner, do-it-yourself homeowner who likes to do their own renovations, and you tear down the wrong wall without doing due diligence, tell us what could happen if that,
I mean, listen, people have a misconception that it's just going to crumble and fall.
Yeah.
It's not. That's not how things work. There's safety factors of safety for a reason, and there's a way that they're constructed for a reason they're like that. But eventually your floors are going to slope extensively, right? So, and it's funny you say that because we recently had a client that's, she rented a commercial space and she wants to open an ice cream shop. And it used to be an office space. Okay. So obviously there's all these little walls and whatnot, nooks and crannies. And when I walked in and I told her, okay, what do you want to do? And she started explaining to me, I want the clients to come in through here. I want my gelato machine on this side. I'm like, this is fantastic. I don't know how big your gelato machines are. What do you want to open? And this was the more difficult one. It took about 4 propositions where I would sort of draw out the plan. I would tell her we would do this before calculating anything. Does that work? Does that work? Does that work? For her to be like, this works. Because I don't think she knew what she wanted either.
Yeah. Because they have an idea in their head, right? And again, it's really revolves around aesthetic sometimes.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You have a general concept, but once you get into the detail, there's some stuff you don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll give you a great idea. I was renovating one of my properties, and at the beginning, this was one of my first properties in my first renovation projects. And at the beginning, I had an idea. It was a duplex with a basement that I could have converted into a unit, right? And obviously, I just saw the bones. I saw the separate entrance. I saw the room in the basement, everything. And I said, hey, let me do it, and I just took action right away because that's the type of person I am.
Yeah.
But when I took action, I realized, okay, we need to remove subflooring, and then we need to raise the ceiling, and then we need to, enlarge in the windows, and then the staircase landing doesn't clear because
it's not the same width.
It's not the same width, and the codes, and you need 6.3 feet or, something like that. And all of a sudden, my project that I was so eager to take action on, I had a roadblock because, again, for me, it was aesthetic, and I didn't understand the structural components to it. And then by the time I budgeted $100,000 for the project, and then with the excavation of the subfloor and the this and the that, I was at $170,000.
Yeah, for sure.
And I said, now I'm 70% over my budget. Maybe we'll just keep it like this attached to the first floor, and then, we'll pivot our plan, and I think a lot of people, like I was at that point in time, don't understand, the structural component. And to them, it's aesthetic. It's just removing a wall. Sure. Or it's changing a layout, right?
Absolutely. And you said something that touched deeply. My favorite quote is, you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, right? So you got to think about all the aspects of it.
Yeah. And you really, before you do something like this, it's important to get informed.
Yeah.
Hire the right professionals, definitely.
Absolutely.
And we were just talking about that before the show. Finding people is a huge challenge. Good people is a huge challenge. In 2024, I don't know what it is, but finding them and it seems any business, being a structural engineer, me being in real estate investment and management and everything, it's a challenge.
Yeah, it's across the board.
And sometimes you can't, unfortunately, rely on them, but you could rely on, which will lead me to my next question, technology.
Absolutely.
Technology you could always rely on. Absolutely. And, innovation is key in any field that you're in. So what are some of the technologies that you use in your day-to-day business?
So we do this interesting. First of all, use of technology not only has a resource component of it, but also an efficiency component that allows it to keep your overheads low. This is something that not a lot of people think about. So obviously, some of the elements we use, for example, we don't need all these softwares, right? We found one single software that I can edit PDFs, AutoCAD drawings, you name it, we can convert it, edit it, create your drawing, create your plan, relatively quickly. What we're working on right now is I'm actually partnered with a software company based out of Europe. I believe they're in Germany.
Okay.
And what they want to do is you take pictures of the room and you put the measurements, and it automatically translates into a floor plan. Now, by being able to do this, I would probably cut my drafting fees by 40%, which will reduce ultimately the cost to the client by 40% on the drafting component.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's an upfront cost of it. Of course. There's an upfront capex of it, but from an operational perspective,
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just that. I save time, you save time, they save money. It's a win-win for everybody.
It's efficiency, right? Time is money.
That's
I mean,
exactly
you know what I mean? It's efficiency. And I think that like, it's interesting, like you said, finding one software with everything you need instead of 10, 15 different softwares.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have, there's AutoCAD, which is the classic. Then you have a different softwares like Smart Draw and all that fun stuff. Well, I've been working with a software called Bluebeam.
Okay.
And Bluebeam, it's legitimately like AutoCAD, but PDF. But you can import CAD drawings, you can import PDF drawings, you can do everything. You can stamp drawings, I can annotate them, I can build floor plans, whatever it may be. If an architect already has his floor plans off a PDF, sends them to me, I can annotate them directly on it. So I don't have to recreate that floor plan, right? Then I can do the structural plan off of the existing floor plan. So you save time.
That's great. Yeah. And so I would imagine you work in collaboration closely with architects and...
Yeah, I mean, typically clients, we do have a couple architects in our contact list, but typically clients find their own architects.
Okay.
And, at the end of the day, I think collaboration makes everything go better.
Yeah.
So I don't always go from the client, like, hey, you talk to your architect, like, give me your architect's phone number, let me talk to them, and we'll resolve this.
Yeah.
And, we've had a couple big projects this year that we've worked with some architects, and it's been nothing but great.
Good.
So, yeah.
Yeah, collaboration is key, and open communication
For sure.
just makes the ship sail smoother.
For sure.
And you're not jumping through hurdles to communicate and,
No.
and there's that, remember broken telephone, that game? Yeah. So there's that thing that, if you were to tell the client something, she might not relay the message properly to the architect because she does not speak the same lingo as you.
For sure. And it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money for everybody. Frustrations. And then, bad reviews, bad experience.
Mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen.
Yeah.
And, you and an architect speak the same lingo.
For sure.
You eliminate that person who does not know that much. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that's very interesting. I like that you said that, because I work in a heavy industry, an industry that's heavy on collaboration. You don't always get it from people, though. But when you get it, you could tell the difference. Collaboration is key. And when you have solid collaboration, you know the difference.
Absolutely.
Versus poor collaboration.
Absolutely. And especially when you're working with contractors, like we do not do the actual work in itself.
Sure.
But, I'll give you an example. A contractor calls up, he goes, hey, the beam that you recommended, I can't find it. Do you have an alternative? Okay, what'd you find in the market? He tells you, go back and look. Okay, well, if you find this beam, this is the dimensions you need, and you adapt it real quick. Whereas if you don't answer, you don't collaborate, they may tell the client might not know what he's talking about. They may buy the wrong beam, install the wrong thing, and then all of a sudden, what's installed, it's done. You're like, no, you can't sign off on this. You have to change everything.
100%.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's happened.
So you would have to change the whole project.
It's happened.
Which costs more money.
It's happened.
And you lose time. Of course, I see it happening because I see negligent professionals doing something like this. Exactly. And maybe it's a rookie mistake.
It's you know what? Yeah. You woke up on a Friday that you got your delivery, you had a bad night's sleep, and they delivered the wrong beam, and you didn't have your morning coffee, you didn't realize it.
Yeah.
It could be anything in the world, right? So.
And then you got to redo everything.
Then you got to redo, or you got to find a solution to
bring it up to code.
Yeah, make do with what you have, type thing, right?
Yeah.
So that client that wanted that 20-foot opening, no, maybe you might not be able to do with the beam you have up there.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I would imagine you run into a problem like that becomes a thing.
Yeah, it does become a thing, right? The finger pointing starts.
Yeah.
And it's never good when you get that. It's never good. It's like, you know what? We're not here for that. Let's find a solution.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
and that's why it's proper. It's better to do things properly from the get-go than to quote unquote, cut corners pretty around.
Absolutely. Do it right the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Measure twice, cut once.
So what trends do you see happening in the future in your field, in your profession? Have you seen any changes in trends or even technology softwares or anything like that? And what trends have you seen and what trends do you see coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is going to play a big part of what we do.
And in everything?
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't fully trust it yet, but it does exist these softwares online that you literally just plug in your dimensions, put in what province you're in or what code you're in, and then it calculates everything for you off the bat.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely ridiculous. But being an engineer, you need to have that. You have that professional liability, so you can't trust it blindly. Right? You need to double check the work, but the times to double check and the time to actually calculate it itself, same thing. So you might as well calculate. So that's one thing. Secondly, in materials, believe it or not, we are having much more performing materials. Back in the days, used to be like steel and those big lumbers like we spoke about.
Yeah.
Right now, your joists are reduced in dimension sizes. They're much cheaper. to acquire their,
So like, it begs to question materials. And you said they're much cheaper to acquire. Does that affect quality?
not necessarily. So quality is two things, okay? There's short-term performance and long-term performance.
Okay.
Obviously, today's homes to build, they're not at the same building standards as 1910.
Yeah.
Best example, look at a 2x4 by today. Look at a 2x4 from 1940.
Yeah.
That was a real 2x4. And today, it's a 1 1/4 by 2.5, right? It's